Bonjour and good morning. Welcome to the Halifax Youth Forum on Immigration and Diversity.
Bienvenue au Forum Jeunesse de Halifax sur
Welcome to Youth Forum on Canada's Diversity. I'm Erin Charon, and a young ambassador for Experience Canada, and honored to be invited to be your Master of Ceremony at today's event.
My name is Ambassador with Experiences Canada 150, and I'm honored to be invited as your MC at today's event.
Nous voudrions commencer en soulignant que les
We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are Mi'kmaq ancestral and ceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Nous voudrions commencer en soulignant que nous sommes solitaires, lesquels nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui, font partie des territoires traditionnels non cédés par des Mi'kmaq et Wolastoqiaq. Les peuples Mi'kmaq ont signé une entente avec la couronne britannique en 1725 et n'ont pas entraîné la cession des terres et des ressources, mais a reconnu le titre de ces peuples pour établir les règles visant à établir une relation permanente. Today's event is being broadcast throughout Canada. We know that there are some 500 young people from 8 provinces and territories who are following us today. We would like to welcome you as well. We encourage you to take an active part in the discussions by bringing us your questions so that we can ask them to our speakers. And later on today, you will also have an opportunity to share your ideas and thoughts that might have come about during the discussions and workshops.
For online participants, we will be accepting your feedback from your breakout sessions prior to, during, and following the sessions. Webcast participants can send questions and comments by following these steps. Click the Participate button on the webcast player, enter your email address, and finally write your question in the space provided and press Send. Alternatively, you can send your feedback following your breakout sessions or feedback to the questions we pose to our dedicated email, that is forum150@experiencescanada.ca. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to the President and CEO of Experiences Canada, organizer of the Canada 150&Me project.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, the President and CEO of Experiences Canada, Deborah Morrison.
It's great to be here in Halifax and in this beautiful historic site where so many people took their first steps towards becoming Canadians. Just as it's been for so many others, we hope that your day here today will be just the beginning of many new opportunities for you. Canada
150&Me began by a very simple idea some 5 years ago. We knew that the 150th anniversary of Canada was going to happen quickly, and as the celebrations around the century in 1967 belonged to a generation, we wanted to find a way to put Canadian youth in a showcase within the framework of these coming celebrations.
But a lot has changed since 1967. Thanks to the emergence of new technologies and digital communications, your generation is so much more connected to the rest of the world and much more aware of the issues and challenges facing our planet. We know you want to change the world just as much as every generation has before you, but you are probably the ones that actually have the tools and capacity to do it in a way that no other generation could before.
And even if you are exploring this vast digital universe and participating in all kinds of imaginable communities, the fact is that most young Canadians, once they get to the age of 18, will have probably visited a foreign country, but probably have never visited another Canadian province.
By the time young Canadians are 18 years of age, they're more likely to have visited another country than to have visited the province next door to them. Opportunities for young Canadians to connect with one another seem to us to be growing fewer and fewer while the rest of the world was opening up to you. But one of the most amazing things about Canada is that you can discover the world's cultures, languages, without ever leaving our borders. And there is so much we can discover about the world by talking first and much more often with each other. We know we're not perfect. We have our own issues to resolve, and there are certainly many things we could be doing better or doing differently. We're excited about the possibilities of more Canadians growing up to be the global citizens of the world that we need them to be. And so we want Canada's 150th to include an opportunity to encourage young Canadians to think first about Canada's own challenges and opportunities in that global context. Having that knowledge about the issues we face right here at home and learning more about the local and national organizations that are working to address them is an important step toward a stronger, more effective global citizenship. So we asked you to tell us what are the greatest challenges and opportunities we're facing in Canada for your generation. Over 2,500 of you have so far responded, with more youth adding their voices with every regional forum we present. From among those first submissions, we selected 150 youth to travel to one of 4 places to learn more about the interests they're most passionate about and to get to know one another. 37 of them, whose work you saw displayed on the screens here earlier this morning, will be spending the whole week here in Halifax learning more about Canada's immigration stories and how we are helping to resettle newcomers today in their new home. But today, we're asking you to think about immigration and the broader issues of diversity and inclusion. This was one of the top 3 areas of interest among youth who've participated in our project. Clearly, you believe that one of Canada's strengths is in our diversity, but many of you felt we could be doing more and we could be doing better. We've got a fantastic lineup of presenters, some of them emerging youth activists and leaders who will inspire you and show you that one person truly can make a difference. And in just a few moments, you will hear from 2 outstanding Canadians who will offer you 2 different perspectives about diversity and inclusion: distinguished activist for human rights and diversity, Senator Ratna Omidvar, and legendary Olympian Senator Chantal Petitclerc.
An important part of our project meant we wanted to have links between activists, young Canadians, and leaders who are working in these fields, and to recognize the contributions of Canadians who really want to make our country better. We are proud to be associated with the Order of Canada to celebrate its 50th anniversary this year, and we are highlighting the members of the Order of Canada in all our activities.
But ultimately, the star of our show today is you. We've put all this time and effort into creating these youth forums so that we can hear your ideas, your concerns, and share your voices with the rest of Canada. And today's event, we will be choosing 38 of you from amongst the on-site and the online audience to become part of our delegation of 150 youth from across Canada who will travel to Ottawa between June 24th and July 2nd to participate in the National Youth Forum and Canada Day celebrations. At the end of the project, you will lead us in creating a milestone report on the issues and opportunities for Canada that today's youth care most about. So please do something that your teachers and your youth leaders often don't tell you to do at events like this. Speak out, speak often, and speak loudly. Have a great day.
Thank you, Deborah. There are many people we would like to thank for having made this project possible, particularly Canada 150 and Youth Engaged from Heritage Canada. We would like to, Youth in Charge, we would like to thank our sponsors, TD Group, Great West Life, McCain Foundation, and WestJet.
150&Me's regional program partners include the Government of Nova Scotia, Parks Canada, and iSANS. And finally, we'd also like to acknowledge our travel partners, Air Canada and Via Rail. Supporting youth, promoting education, and community engagement are cornerstones of our presenting National Sponsors Community Giving Strategy. We're proud to partner with them in the Canada 150&Me project. It is my pleasure to invite Keisha Campbell, Branch Manager of TD Bank Group, to say a few words.
So good morning, everyone. So the energy is a little bit low. Can I get like a woohoo for what today is going to be? Awesome. So I am actually really excited to be here this morning, inspired actually, to look around the room and see faces like yourself ready to actually lead the change when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So when you look at me, I'm actually a product of immigration myself, and I'm proud to call Canada home, and now Halifax. Originally landed in Ontario, but now actually a resident of the beautiful Nova Scotia province. So now I'll go to exactly what I need to say today, and then I'll hand the floor over and open it up for great discussion this afternoon. So forums such as this one, giving each and every one of you a chance to share with us through creativity, your great challenges and the opportunities you're facing, really forms what we would represent as the generation of tomorrow. And it is especially important when we look at this being Canada's 150th birthday. We know that greater public awareness and community engagement is the first step in addressing some of the biggest challenges ahead of us, whether it's the environment, human rights, diversity and inclusion, which is the theme for today, or how we engage the world through trade, business, and innovation. Building that awareness at an early age, and sometimes I feel I'm still at that early age, but then I see all of you and I'm rudely awakened, through discussion will ensure that Canadians, both at home and abroad, set a positive example for social responsibility and continue to build sustainable communities going forward. Many of the challenges we face today, here and abroad, also require a new way of thinking, innovation, new perspectives. And this is why we have you in this room today to sort of share your perspectives of what you see for the future. Our job is not simply to leave these problems to you for you to solve on your own, but we do need your support to provide opportunities through forums like today, where we can help develop networks and opportunities in leadership and critical thinking. So we ask that you feel bold today to share your opinions, feel empowered to know that your voice is going to be heard, and know that even the smallest idea, if action is taken, can lead to significant change going forward. If I have one request for you, because I'm now putting myself in sort of where I was when I was your age, is to stay connected, form connections, network with the people in the room, because you guys are the leaders of tomorrow. Engage in the debate, encourage each other, challenge the opinions that are put forward, because again, as I said, you are the voices of tomorrow. I'm so excited by the future, and I really thank you for giving me the opportunity as a representative of TD, my employer for the last 13 years, to really speak to you today. And I wish you a very successful day, and good luck to the 38 of you who are selected to go forward. Have a great day.
Merci encore, Keisha.
Thank you once again, Keisha Cameron. We very much appreciate your support.
To the stage, Marie Chapman, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21. Ms. Chapman was named the first CEO of the Canadian Museum of Immigration in 2011, but she has been a driving force in the evolution and development of the museum for the past 15 years.
Mesdames et messieurs, Marie Chapman, directrice.
Ladies and gentlemen, CEO of Canadian Museum of Immigration, Ms. Marie Chapman. Bienvenue tout le monde. Bienvenue. C'est un honneur pour moi et le privilège d'être la directrice générale de ce musée. Et au nom de moi,
Volunteers and staff, I want to continue the Mi'kmaq tradition of welcoming you here today, and especially a welcome to our special guest Senators Omidvar and Petitclerc for gracing us with their presence as well. It's a great day. I will also echo Keisha's comment that every once in a while I think I'm relatively young. My 16-year-old son reminds me otherwise, but I'm certainly reminded of it today. So the energy in the room, I think, will hold us in good stead. I was thinking about your forum, and I was wishing that Dr. Ruth Goldblum could be here. Dr. Ruth was the president of the Pier 21 Society and the driving force behind the creation of what is now the Canadian Museum of Immigration of Pier 21, but at the time it was a shed that artists were in. It was mostly neglected. There was wasn't much here. And her life was a testament to that fact that one person can make a difference. most people saw this as an empty shed, and our landlord, the port, thought it was a difficult place to manage. But she saw so clearly what this place could be. She had a vision and an energy, and she could see it before anybody else could. And here we are. She made it a reality. So I hope I can give to you a little tiny bit of Dr. Ruth's inspiration and say that, you can make something happen. And she did it. She did it. People didn't know. They got confused and thought we were Pier 1 imports. That happened. My mom thought I was working at Pier 1 imports, my mom. So, just know that you can make that difference. And your work today will honor that vision for the museum as a place of dialogue and of engagement and of energy. And I know she would love to have been here today, and I feel lucky and again privileged that I am. So enjoy being together, enjoy those discussions. I know you're ready to go, so I just want to get on to the most important part of my job, which is introducing a very special lady. And I think in many ways that energy and passion and perseverance personifies Senator Ratna Omidvar as well. She's an internationally recognized expert on migration, diversity, and inclusion. She herself immigrated to this country, and I think her experiences, and she wrote a book with letters to the country in it that, just read it. It's amazing, and it's by my bed always, as she knows. She's an independent senator representing Ontario. She was appointed as a senator by Prime Minister Trudeau just over a year ago, although it feels like a lot longer for all of you who were appointed at the time. You've done a lot. She's also, again, things that didn't exist that happened. There's a theme here. She is the founding executive director and currently a distinguished visiting professor at the Global Diversity Exchange, Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson. She's also a director of Environics in Samara. She's TRIAC, we know it as TRIAC, but it's called the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Councils. She's the chair emerita, and she was a member of Lifeline Syria. But Senator Omidvar is somebody I've known for a long time. In my mind, I only met her last fall, but she did so many things to break those boundaries and to push and to make things happen. So it's really an honor to have her here today. She was appointed to the Order of Ontario in 2005. You'll see all the pins. And became a member of the Order of Canada in 2000. Advocacy work on behalf of immigrants and devotion to reducing inequality of all kinds in Canada. The advancement of German and Canadian relations. So she is petite in stature, much like Ruth, but she is large in energy and in that outsized piece, so it seems right for me to ask Senator Omidvar to come and give that first keynote of the morning. And I wish you a great day.
Thank you, Maria. That was a wonderful introduction. And on the petite note, I have to tell you something my grandmother always said to me. This is in a dusty little town in India. And she always said to me, the best things come in the smallest possible. So that was a bit of consolation for me, because I did suffer from being tiny. And maybe there are young girls and boys who relate to that. But I do think that you are more than your physical manifestation. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about that. So isn't it wonderful that you're gathered here today to talk about immigration and diversity in this beautiful museum? And if you have time, and I urge you to have the time, to read the stories of the people who came on boats many, many years ago to make Canada their home. And I think this conversation that you're having is particularly important today as the rest of the world, or many parts of the world, close their hearts and minds. Canada stands, sometimes it feels like, almost alone with its welcoming arms open. And this story of exceptionalism in Canada also calls on us to take exceptional leadership and understanding of what it is that holds us together despite all our differences. And who better to be exceptional leaders for the future than young people? I'm a huge believer that narrative gives shape and context to what you're talking about. And this place is full of stories. And as I said, I would urge you to read some of the stories of the people who came with nothing and built lives for themselves and their children and their grandchildren, and in so doing, built this wonderful country. But there is a common narrative that runs through the story of every immigrant, regardless when or where you go from. I call this the 5 chapters of the immigrant story. And the first chapter always starts with flight, if you're seeking safety, or departure of another kind. The second chapter is always arrival when you come here. The third is, and this is common, rejection. You will experience rejection. The fourth is renewal. And the fifth is finally what I would call redemption. And I'm going to tell you my story in these 5 chapters in the short time we have. So my story of flight started in Iran, where I lived with my partner and young child. She was a year old. And Iran was in 1979, 1980. I hope world history is a favorite of ours. A famous revolution took place. And we were ordinary people. We were completely ordinary people. We were not politically engaged. And we thought for a year, for 2 years, we're ordinary people. The revolution is not going to touch your life. But trust me on this. You cannot divorce yourself from what's happening around the world. And one night, it did touch our lives in a very fierce way, so much so that we had to pack our bags in one night, try and leave the next day. The airport had been bombed. We had to take the bus. And we arrived in northern Iran, eastern Turkey, which is the border between Iran and Turkey. And we're in a room like this, and one side of the room, I'm standing with my family, along with 100 other people wanting to leave, and the other side is Turkey. And on this side of the room is a picture of Khomeini. And the other side of the room is a picture of Ataturk, and that's where we want to get. And we're also surrounded by soldiers. And they were, by the way, very young boys, as young as you. But here's the difference. They were afraid because for the first time they had power. They were soldiers, and they had weapons. And one thing I've learned over these years, that those are toxic combinations. Fear and weapons make for a toxic combination. So we were all afraid. And we were desperately trying to get across to the other side. And I remember a promise I made to myself. I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person. And I said, dear God, get us over to the other side, and I will never ask you for anything else again. And we did get over to the other side, and I'm only a frail human being, so of course I've broken that promise many times. But every now and then, I'll think back on that moment and realize how incredibly lucky I am to have been given refuge here. Well, when we arrived, everything was very strange, very different. There were many written and unwritten rules. And even now, I wonder, as a Canadian of many years, I'm still struck by what a polite society we are, how we stand in line for everything. We respect each other's private space. These were all very new concepts based on where I came. And then I experienced rejection. Almost in the first or second week, I was told to change my name because it was too strange, it was too different, it was hard to get, your tongue around, all these consonants and vowels, and most importantly, I was told I would not get a job because of my name, because it was a strange name. And that actually made me stop and think, because getting a job when you come with nothing, that's the most important thing. And I actually gave myself a new name for 3 days. I practiced a new name every day. So one day I was Rita, the next day I was Rosa, and the third day I was Rhoda. But in the end, I couldn't do it because my name is like the color of my skin. How can I shed my name? So I have kept it, but I did change many things about myself. And this is the renewal part. I changed what I do. So for some strange reason, my occupation, I'm actually a teacher of German literature. So who would have thought that? So I decided no one was going to want to learn German from an Indian who had just come from Iran as a refugee. That wasn't going to happen. So I reinvented myself. And from these stories, from my own story, which is, I think, very common to many, many other people's stories, I've gained some reflection on why this is such an important subject, because Canada is and always will be a country of immigrants. And I'm going to leave you with a metaphor of the house that Canada has built. And I use this metaphor often to describe our society. So think of Canada as a house with a very strong foundation, lots of windows, lots of light, but with a strong protective roof. And the foundation of the house are two principles. One, that everybody is equal. It does not matter where you came from or when you came. We are all equal as citizens. And the second foundation is that citizens do better. They prosper quicker, and when immigrants integrate, Canada prospers. So the second principle is that getting citizenship faster is better for them, and it's better for Canada. But every house needs a protection as well. So our house too has a strong roof. It keeps out people who would do us harm. It keeps out people who would try and misrepresent or cheat or lie their way into our house. So this is the house that Canada built. And I'm hoping that in this 150th year of celebration, you will contribute to this house in different ways. You will paint a wall a different color, you will hang a new picture, and this is something that is so essential to the Canadian dream, that when we come as immigrants, we will be guests in the house for the first little while. We will sit on the corner of the chair, and then we will become more comfortable. Over time, we learn how the dishwasher works and how to fix the blown fuse, and then comes a time where we will say, this is our house too. We're going to change the furniture. We're going to paint the house another color, because we are equal Canadians. So with that, thank you very much.
Merci, Madame Omidvar.
Thank you, Madame Omidvar.
I very much relate to your story and those 5 chapters that the process of immigration entails.
Nous avons quelques minutes pour répondre aux...
And now we have a few minutes to answer questions. For those who would like to ask questions, I would like to ask you to line up in front of one of the ambassadors with a microphone.
Forward and line up where our youth ambassadors are standing with microphones on either aisle.
Pour s'assurer que le plus de jeunes
So to ensure that as many people as possible can ask questions, we're going to take questions from several young people, and then we'll give the floor to Madame Omidvar. For those who are participating online, send your questions and comments, and that will help us to hear your voices in this discussion.
So we can see we already have a few lined up for questions. So why don't we start over on this side?
Hello. I very much liked your analogy of the house that immigrants can come into and say that it's their own house too. So I was just wondering if you have any advice for young people and for what we can do to also make immigrants feel as if that this is their house too, and they can change something, like you said, change the wall color or move the furniture.
Sorry, we might get you to repeat that
Yeah,
question.
I think I got the question.
Okay.
So actually, I had a whole part of my speech that I decided not to give because I prefer to open it up to your questions. I think there are two things you can do. First of all, diversity is actually a feature of democracy. In and of itself, it's not interesting. It only becomes interesting if you create a deliberate path to inclusion. So instead of talking aspirationally about values, etc., I prefer to see people take action, concrete action. So you asked me about concrete action, and the best advice I can give to young people is to travel. Go outside. Go and experience the world as it is lived in other places. And I don't mean, the 21-day tour of Europe or whatever it is. Go and study somewhere else. I'm incredibly disturbed by the fact that the numbers of young Canadians who are going overseas to study is dropping steadily. Now, maybe there's a policy issue here that Chantal and I can get together and try and fix, but I think it is really important to experience the world in all its glory, with all its challenges. So I would say that's the best thing. At your young age, go and experience the world. Take a risk. Learn to fall down. That's how you will become strong. Did I get the question right?
Yes, that answered it very well. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we go over to this side? Yeah.
Hi, my father was born in India and he came to Canada, and I also often struggle with people pronouncing or even wanting to pronounce my last name. And I'm wondering how you deal with people who tell you that they would prefer you go by your other name or a separate name, and how you overcome stuff like that, like to get a job and things like that.
Frankly, I'm surprised that people are politically incorrect enough, because in the meantime, it's completely not done to ask people to change their names. But the science, the evidence lately from the University of Toronto continues to suggest that people with non-Canadian sounding names will be 30 to 60% disadvantaged in job interviews. So if you're applying, let's say, to the big companies in Canada with a name like mine, or let's say a name like yours, I'm going to assume that, you're 30% less likely to get interviews. And in small and mid-sized companies, you're 60% less likely to get interviews. So it's a real barrier. But I will say this to you. Your name is your personal pin. Don't lose it. Use every moment as a teachable moment, which I do. And Senator Petitclerc knows about this. I often stop, especially in committee, and I say, Senator, the correct pronunciation of my name is Omidvar. How difficult can this be? So I just sort of use it as a teachable moment. I don't get angry. I just sort of try and say, perhaps this will help you. And that's what I would suggest that you do.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. So just a reminder, for those of you participating online, please go ahead and send in your comments and questions, and we'll bring them in off the email and the computer into the conversation after we've taken a few from the live audience. Fareed, do we have one ready?
Yes, so we do have a question from Grace. Canada and the United States are neighbors and are often compared to each other. Immigration policies of Trump's government and Trudeau's government are vastly different. Do you believe that in the future there will be a policy on immigration that is universally accepted and practiced by all developed countries?
Can you just
Repeat
the
the
question
question.
again?
Do you believe that in the future there will be a policy on immigration that is universally accepted and practiced by all developed countries?
Whether there will be a universal policy on immigration, I do not believe there will be a policy that will be universal, because nation states have the right to determine who gets into their country and under what conditions. We do have the United Nations, and the United Nations is developing standards and global compacts on safe, orderly migration and refugee rights. So I think there's a difference between the standards and aspirational goals multinational arrangements like the United Nations set, and then the difference that individual nation states make decisions on their own. I will say that the United States and Canada are completely different in this, and we have always been different. Our stories are told in different ways. We take pride in the fact that we are a multicultural society. They think of themselves as a melting pot. Everybody becomes American, and whilst everybody becomes Canadian here too, we take pride that we are from here and we are from there, which is always my personal brand is I'm from here, I'm from somewhere else, and that's good for Canada to be global.
Thank you. Yes, why don't we go over to this side?
I'm wondering what changes you've seen in the national and international dialogue over your time that you've been in Canada, and just what has really been, what we've really been moving towards in the past decades in terms of immigration, in terms of diversity.
Okay, the major change in this country, we're only going to talk about Canada, is the demographic makeup of immigration after 1980. After 1980, because we lifted a bias towards that was deliberate in selecting immigrants of European origin, we lifted that bias to what we called a blind selection process, and that has brought diversity to our doors in many ways. What has also changed, and this happened, I think, in the early 2000s, that this narrative started to permeate itself over Canada, and it was this: Canada needs immigrants. By and large, you take a look at our political narrative in this country, there is not a single political party that is anti-immigration. We will argue about what size and shape immigrants should come in, but we will not argue that we need immigrants, because everybody understands the demographic imperatives in this country. Without immigration, it's a downward dive. So everybody understands that. So that's the second. And the third is the slow understanding, and I'm glad to have played a role in this, that if immigrants succeed, Canada succeeds. If immigrants fail, to some extent, Canada also fails. And this is a narrative that is healthy. Now, I will also tell you that we do not live in multi-culti la-la land. You know, disabuse yourself of that notion. Just as there are people who are strongly pro-immigrant, pro-human rights, pro-globalization, there are, that's 30% of our population. 30% of our population are anti-globalization, anti-immigration, have had enough of diversity. It's the 30% in the middle that matters, that can switch the needle this way or that way. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Gosh, I'll have to give shorter answers, I think.
Come over here.
With Canadians in the Canadian West, there's a large population which does not deem immigration as healthy for the Canadian population in the West. With mostly rural and farming communities out west, immigration is a highly, I don't want to say, controversial topic. How do you suggest we ease in boundaries and help people in the West accept immigration on a wider scale?
Well, I think their own prosperity is tied to their success or failure in bringing and keeping immigrants, because they are losing population. And this is sort of a well-known fact. And I've been to Halifax many times to talk to governments about how do you not only attract but retain. We have to be very careful in Canada that we do not become a story of multicultural urban centers and the rest of Canada. So I take your point well, and I think it's something, I always think self-interest trumps everything. So how is it that immigration can be good for your farm, for your small community, for your economy? And that's the narrative and the story that will hold.
Thank you.
We have another question online. Why do you think people continue to fear immigrants despite the positives many see? How can we minimize these fears?
I'm not sure I understood.
Sorry,
I
I'll
heard
repeat-
the
I'll
last
repeat that.
part of the question.
So, why do you think people continue to fear immigrants despite the positives many see? How can we minimize this fear?
I think Canadians need to understand that if people really want to harm Canada, there are much easier ways of getting into it than becoming an immigrant or coming as a refugee, frankly. You can just, whatever. I also want to tell you, and the person who asked the question, that the level of screening and qualifying and testing, especially of refugees when they come into this country, is very, very high. You compare the world's most security-conscious country, which is the US, and you compare Canada, our processes are exactly mirror. So, and I would ask you, when was the last time a refugee became a threat to this country? It is part of this global narrative of fear that we must counteract, because we don't have that history. I'm not pretending that there are not people who want to harm us, but to automatically tie them to immigration as opposed to what is happening in the UK and France, which is their lack of success in integration. We do well in integration. Look at it. Our two previous Governor Generals were refugees. P.K. Subban, it matters he's a hockey hero. It matters that the CEO of TD was born in Africa. It matters, I think, that I'm a senator. We have role models. So when people see success is possible, they have greater ownership and have less desire to harm it. Now, maybe that's just an aspirational explanation, but I do believe in that quite strongly.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Before we let you go, though, Senator, I would like to invite Lucas Galland up on stage and thank you on behalf of the forum. Our second presenter this morning is Senator Chantal Petitclerc, former Paralympian and recent chef de mission for the Canadian Paralympian team in Rio.
À l'âge de 13 ans, elle a perdu.
At the age of 13, she lost the use of both her legs due to an accident at a friend's farm. With the support of her high school gym teacher, she learned to swim and later be introduced to competitive wheelchair racing. She went on to compete in 5 Olympic Games, winning 21 medals, 14 of them gold.
Named Companion in the Order of Canada for her achievements as a Paralympian champion known internationally as an inspiration and for her commitment to developing sports for athletes with a disability. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Chantal Petitclerc.
Merci beaucoup, bonjour.
Thank you. Good morning.
Catch a flight because I wanted to hear you for another 15 minutes. And I am so happy to be here and so inspired by my colleague, Senatrice Omidvar. And I want it to be a conversation that continues. You know, she talks about immigration. I want to talk about diversity in a bit of a different angle, but in the end, I guess what I want to be sharing and the message that I hope stays is how diversity, how our differences are powerful, and how they are what makes us strong as person, but also as a country. Alors, ça me fait vraiment un très, très grand plaisir de...
So it's a very great pleasure for me to have this opportunity to share with you my history, not only as an athlete, but as a person.
My journey in a very personal way, a little bit like Senatrice Omidvar did, because for me, being different, being a person with disability, did start with one big challenge. And this is something I believe in. I believe that, you know, in the end, it doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, and what we're trying to achieve with the time, the talents, and the passions that we have. One thing that I know for sure is that we all will have to face many, many challenges just to get where we want to go and achieve what we want to achieve. And I also believe that every and each of us are unique, and we all have our differences. Some are more visible than others, but those differences are what makes us unique and what makes us strong. And so to me, of course, you know, you will understand that it did start with one big challenge, and that is the challenge of my accident. I come from a very small town, Saint-Marc-des-Carrières. We were visiting some friends of the family who had a farm. The farm was abandoned, disaffected, and so as soon as we got there, I was 13. As soon as we got there, you know, the message from the parents was very clear. We, the children, were not allowed to go play on the farm because it was abandoned and dangerous. So of course, being young, being so young, the very first thing we decided to do was not to listen to our parents, and we went to play there. And very quickly, like this, there was a barn door that was broken, laying on the ground. We wanted to lift the door, put a bit of a crate underneath it, and transform it into a jumping ramp for a bicycle. And so that's what we did. And holding the door like that, my friend left for 10 seconds. And you know, 10 seconds, sometimes that's all it takes to change your life forever. And myself, at the age of 13, and with not as much muscles as I did at the Paralympic Games, I was not able to hold the door, and so the door fell on me and broke my spinal cord, and that's how I became a paraplegic at the age of 13. And the reason I want to talk about it is you know, is not to make you feel sorry for me, but because in that period of my life, what I learned is that, you know, in the biggest challenge that we have to face, and sometimes tragedy like this one, they are the most difficult times of our lives, but they're also the times where we learn the most about who we are, about the people around us. And I guess what I learned from that experience is that, sorry about that, is that, you know, in a situation where you lose control over everything, like an accident like this one, of course, you don't plan for it to happen, you don't see it coming, you don't want it to happen, but when it's there, and you need to face it. And I guess what I learned from it is that in a situation where you lose every control, the only control that you have is the control over your own emotions and over your own attitude. And that is very important. Senatrice Omidvar, I think, showed it very. Attitude is everything. And to me, very quickly, because of who I was, because of the amazing people I had around me, I was very able to understand quickly that even with this wheelchair, even with being different, my life did not stop. It was taking a new direction, and I still had a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities that was waiting for me. And I do want to touch on a few of them because I think they are representative of what we can accomplish in this country. And one of the first opportunity that came to me was sport and wheelchair racing. Now I could go on for 1 hour just on my 5 Paralympic Games, and I would love to, because I enjoy talking about that part of my life, but only to say that, sport came into my life, and I was ready for a new challenge. I was at peace with being a person with a disability, and this was going to be the most amazing adventure of my life, to become a Paralympic athlete, to represent Canada for 5 Paralympic Games going. Senatrice Omidvar was talking about traveling, and sport really allowed me to travel the world from the age of 19 until I retired, almost at 40, and this really allowed me to see the world, but also to push my limits. Through those games, we were saying, I came back and I retired with 21 Paralympic medals. And I guess, everybody will mention the medals, of course, and I still, I have the medals and I like them, of course, but I think every athlete will tell you that what you learn through what you choose to do, what you learn to go out there and represent your country and win those medals is really what makes a big, big difference. And it really is what matters. And through those 20 years of training very, very hard every day, of representing my country, of making a lot of sacrifices just to be at that top level again and again and again, it really made me who I was going to become, and really made me proud also of the country where I lived. I don't think Paralympic athletes or athletes, are not recognized as much as we recognize and appreciate and value our athletes here in Canada, and especially when it comes to Paralympic athletes. And so again, this is a difference that became a strength. Some people will say you take a weakness and you turn it into a strength, and that's really what it was in my case, to take that accident and that disability and use it to push my own limit in a sport that would take me to those amazing, amazing adventures. I came back from Beijing. I retired from Beijing in 2008 with all these medals, with all this passion for my sport and expertise. And I remember when I retired from Beijing, the big question that I had was, like many athletes who retired, my question was, what am I going to do with my life now? Or as athletes say, what will I do when I grow up? Because sport is so much fun. And again, using all my differences as a person with a disability, but also as an athlete, I was very fortunate to be able to go and work in London for 2 years, working for the London Olympic Organization Committee as they were getting ready for hosting their games, and representing and coaching and representing athletes in London. And I came back home with this expertise, and I remember back home knowing that I wanted to have an impact, that sport has brought me so much as a person, and this experience of high-performance athlete has brought me so much that I wanted to find a place in my life where I could also give back and have an impact. And that's when, on a Tuesday night at 5:20 at home, my phone rang, and I answered the phone, and it said, "Hello Chantal, hello Madame Petitclerc, here is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau." So my first reaction was, my son was there. My son is 3-year-old, and my first reaction was like, "Oh no, my nanny is not there." And my son was talking, and he wanted to grab the phone. So I said to Prime Minister Trudeau, I said to him, I'm so sorry, it's so loud, it's my son, Elliot. And he says, oh, I do approve of the name. And that's when I learned that I was appointed as a senator in the Senate. And it was at the same time overwhelming, the most amazing privilege, and also a huge responsibility. We said it before, we've been there, the new senators, we've been appointed for now over a year. And when I went into the Senate, I thought, how am I going to take everything that I am, everything that I care about, whether it's health, whether it's sport, access to physical activity for all, the rights of persons with disability, and how am I going to take all of that knowledge and passion into the Senate to try to play my part into making this country the best country that it can be. And I have to say that the first month, I did not get that answer on how I was going to do it. The first month was more about figuring out where was the Senate compared to the cafeteria and the washrooms. It is a new environment, and learning how to navigate in there and being exposed to so many amazing people around me and the process of legislation. But 1 year later, I can say that I am making a difference in the Senate, and that the Senate is making a difference in the lives of Canadians, and that is truly amazing. But what I want to say with that, I find it's two things. We're talking about diversity. When we look at the Senate, I find it's a perfect example of diversity, because we have people from all across the country with all different sort of expertise. Myself as a sport person, Senatrice Omidvar as a specialist in immigration. We have scientific people, we have medical persons and lawyers, and it really, after 1 year, made me aware on how everybody being different, everybody pursuing their own passion, their own limits, reaching their own goals, and then bringing all of that together is such an amazing and powerful thing. And this is what diversity is really all about. And this is what you are all about. I think when you look, and that's why I wanted to tell you very, very quickly of my journey, and it could have been longer, but I think you can see the thread, and you can see that, I don't think there are many countries that I could myself, as Chantal, Petitclerc, have had this amazing journey. Having this accident so young, being able, because we are in Canada, to have access to the best and affordable and healthcare, so that I could get back into being, fit and healthy, and then having access so that I could get back to school and go to university and have all of the same as everybody else, and then become a Paralympic athlete that would be not only active but also funded and then recognized. I have this Order of Canada here as a Paralympian. It may look like nothing to you, but I don't think there are many countries where Paralympic athletes will get the highest recognition that you can get in a country. And this is something that, and then having a Paralympic athlete, a person in a wheelchair, to be a member of the Senate. So what I'm telling you is that, this is a country where everything is possible. And if it was possible for me, surely it is possible to each and all of you. And it is possible when we decide that we want to do it. And I guess this is the message I have on diversity, is that anybody that sees it as a weakness, they are wrong. Diversity is what makes us unique and strong as a person, but also as a country. So I do want to thank you for being here, for listening to me, for engaging in that conversation on diversity, and especially for taking it back to everywhere that you're going, and for keeping it with you in everything that you will choose to pursue. Alors, merci, merci beaucoup. It's
Thank you very, very much.
to be here. Thank you so much for everything you will do. Merci. Thank you. Merci. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Petitclerc.
Thank you, Madame Petitclerc. Once again, we invite those of you who would want to ask a question to come forward and line up with our youth ambassadors who are standing with microphones.
You who want to ask a question to come forward and line up where our youth ambassadors are standing with microphones. I'd also like to note, we would ask you all to be kind to your fellow participants and keep your questions short. In order to take more questions, we're also going to ask several of you to pose your questions first, and then we'll turn the microphone to the center to get an answer.
And for those of you participating online, please feel free to send in your questions and comments, and we'll do our best to bring them into the conversation.
So we'll start off.
Hello. My question was, being involved with and a part of the Paralympics in that community, how have the unique and personal struggles, perseverance, and success stories of fellow Paralympians impacted and empowered you moving forward?
Mm-hmm. So you want me to wait, or
Yeah,
should
so
I?
we'll get 2 questions,
Okay.
and then we'll get...
Hi, I was just wondering, what advice would you give about educating other students, especially about people with disabilities and our fellow classmates? Because I know a lot of people are very cautious around people with disabilities, and they're very sensitive and they're kind, but they don't know how to act or react. So what advice would you give about educating people about others with disabilities?
Okay, thank you. When we talk about inspiration and I was inspired by Paralympic athletes, and in fact, Rick Hansen, Paralympic athlete, but also advocate for persons with disability, inspired me when I started, before I started racing, because he visited my school only 2 years after my accident. And just to see him, because he was doing at the time a world tour for raising awareness for spinal cord injury, and that truly, just to think that someone in a wheelchair could travel the world only 2 years after my accident, this was absolutely inspirational for me, and really made me believe that, you know, if he can do it, I can do it. So I do believe in the power to inspire others, and he certainly was one of them, and then many others, Paralympians or not. So yeah, and I think that's the thing as well, you know, like I was inspired also by Olympians. I know as a Paralympic athlete that I inspired athletes with no disability, and I think that is also quite amazing. And it goes to answer to your question on how to act or how to react and how we can educate ourselves. And I think, you know, I think the best way to act is just to be who we are, and to not be afraid to ask questions, and also to not being overprotective. I think that's the one mistake people will do, is to do too much, you know, and most people with disability, if they need help, they will ask for it, and it's really about it's really about not judging in terms of I would say, and I'm going to be careful with that, but you know, if someone is in a wheelchair, it's pretty easy. But some disabilities sometimes, and I know I have friends, for example, who have language difficulty because of their disability. And then people will just, you know, they will speak slower, or they will speak louder. Maybe they think they're not as smart as they are, and these guys have PhD in something. So that is something, you know, that be open, that a physical disability, most of the time, that's just what it is. It is a physical disability and nothing more. And so I would say to just be natural. Of course, education is important, but I find being open to diversity is the key. Because the more we see persons with disability, you know, having access to education, going to school, getting in the workforce, and being in just every environment that we have, I think it changes the minds.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, so we have a few people with the same theme on the online questions. So what are some things that you think we can do in Canada to improve accessibility for people who have disabilities?
I think there are a lot of things that are happening. I think everything starts with physical access everywhere. Because no matter how driven you are or educated, if you want to go somewhere, it needs to be physically accessible. So that's the one thing, but that's pretty easy to do, and it's been done at most places now. And then the next step is really about open mind. You see, especially when it comes to the workforce, I think people having, the way I describe it, and when I speak to persons with disability, is the door is not closed, it's a little open, and then it's our job as a person with a disability to push it, to go and do those job interviews, to not be scared, and to make people realize that no matter what the disability is, very often it's just a question of adapting. For some disability, it could be adapting a computer, it could be little changes that will allow a person with a disability to be a fully active member of Canada. And this is very, very valuable. The other thing I want to say is we do have now Minister Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Sport and Persons with Disability. Herself is visually impaired person, and so I know, and a lawyer. So I know she is going across Canada right now to do a forum on asking a lot of people in every provinces and many cities on what is and what should be accessible Canada. Out of that consultation will come a bill, I suspect in the next year, that will be something that we don't have yet in Canada. And this will be, I think, a major change for I guess, just closing the gaps in different provinces in education versus work versus access to sport and activity. So I think this bill from Minister Qualtrough will just close all those little gaps.
We'll take 2 more questions from each aisle.
What are some ways you've combated people that tell you no and that you're not able to while being an Olympian and in the Senate as a woman in the Senate?
Okay.
So I know that a lot of people, when they're involved in an accident, they feel like giving up. They feel like they can't do anything when it's obviously not the case. So how would you empower youth who have recently been involved in an accident who are perhaps feeling that way?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the questions. I forgot the other question.
What are some challenges you faced being a woman in the Senate?
Yes. I think there are many challenges, but being a woman, being a person with disability, being a former Paralympian, I think very often the challenges or the barriers are within ourselves more than outside. Like when I got into the Senate, I felt I don't know in English, le complexe de l'imposteur, le syndrome de l'imposteur.
The imposter syndrome.
I felt like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm from the sport, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm a woman, and here in the Senate. But again, you realize that it's just a matter of pushing those doors a little bit. Maybe it's intimidating. Maybe sometimes there are still areas where there's not a lot of women or a lot of persons with disability. But when you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it and you're passionate and you work well and hard, everybody will recognize your value. And we have to trust that, we have to trust that. We have to know that sometimes it's a little more difficult and maybe it's not fair, and it is not fair, but in the end, that's not a reason not to do it. So that's always the approach that I've had. Even to answer the question of attitude after an accident, it's the same thing, it's always going to be, in life, it's always going to be easier to put yourself in a victim position and blame others And in some case, and we all will find excuses, whether it's the wheelchair, whether it's where I come from a small town, my family was not super rich, and we all will find excuses for not pushing ourselves, but it doesn't pay off, and it's not, and most importantly, well, it doesn't work, and it's not going to make us happy and fulfilled. And to me, this is the main goal. Apart from the medal, you have the success, you have the good job, but in the end, you want to have a life that you enjoy. And so it's important to have the attitude, and no matter if you have this accident, you always have two choices, and those two choices is always in your head, whether you go and you're positive, or whether you choose to look at everything that's not positive. And I strongly believe that's a choice that we have.
Thank you.
Merci. Merci.
We have a question from Grace online. So what were some of the mental obstacles that you've had to overcome since your accident? And what are some suggestions and advice you have for maybe young people who are also dealing with a disability or maybe a disease or a disorder?
I think the biggest thing when you have an accident, and I was young, it was in the summer between elementary school, beginning high school, and you will always have many kinds of people, but in general, you will have people that will tell you you can't do it. Whether it's, you can't do it in the wheelchair, you can't go there. People were telling me, don't focus on sport, you're in a wheelchair, you should study something that is in a computer or something because, you can't do it. And then I became an athlete, so it can't be more physical than that. Or they will say, well, you can't win 5 gold medals. It's never been done in your sport. And then you do it, you can't do anything until someone does it. And a friend of mine, Mark Tewksbury, swimmer, Olympian, said, no matter what it is in life, you can be sure that someone somewhere will do it. Why not you? And that's his big thing, is like, why not me? Someone will do it. Someone will win those medals. Someone will break the world records. Someone will become an artist. And why not you? Why not me? And I think it is a very, very simple question that changes everything, because it's about empowerment. So I guess I say very, very quickly after my accident, and I don't know if it was a deliberate choice, but I moved away from people that were telling me that you can't do this, you can't go there, you shouldn't, it's dangerous, and I just was attracted and went to people who were telling me, what do you want to do? How can we help you do that? What's your big dream? And so whether it was as a student with a disability, later on as an athlete, or later on as a senator, when I told a few friends, should I do that? I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legislator, I'm not a politician. And so go with the people who trust in your strength. They are the people you want around you. And then maybe the people who don't trust in your strength are the persons that you don't need. But that's just me.
That's excellent, yeah.
Merci.
So we're going to take one more question from online.
Of course, yeah.
How do we harness the power of diversity when there appears to be such a societal need for individuals to fit in?
Mm-hmm. I think embracing diversity, you can fit in and be unique. It's about respect. It's about having people around the table, and everybody is different. Everybody can have different color of skin, religion, accent, persons with disability, sexual orientation, and we all have something to bring that makes life more fun, more interesting, and makes the country stronger. Like, I believe in that, you know. I believe that we learn, you know, what does someone who is exactly like me going to teach me? I know it if they're exactly like me, but I can learn so much from people who are different, who look different, who think different, and that's how you become a better person. So I find that embracing diversity and being an individual and being unique is not a contradiction, on the contrary. So I think that's what we have to go for. And it is more challenging, you know. Of course it's easier. It's going to be easier to be in a group with everybody doing the same thing as you do, thinking the same thing, looking the same way you do. It's easier because it's never out of your zone of comfort. It never challenges your ideas, but you don't grow from that, you know. You grow from being challenged and from embracing those challenges.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you for your participation. So yeah, unfortunately we have to close off questions here, so we can break into our workshop groups and give a chance to share your ideas. But before we go, I would like to invite Sophie Smith, Dos Mohammed, on stage to thank Senator Petitclerc on behalf of the forum.
Merci. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Thank you.